A couple of months ago, I received an email from a teacher in my school district where I serve as assistant superintendent. He shared that he was organizing a TEDx event and that he wanted me to participate. He told me that the themes were fearless women and leadership. He was recruiting women from our school community to share their stories. He told me that he knew I had an important story to tell, and he asked me if I would be a part of it. I told him that I would, and then almost immediately, I became panicked. I'd seen those TEDx talks where people had marched across the stage and recited these eloquent speeches off the top of their head, and I knew that I wasn't able to do that, and not to convey everything that I wanted to say. So, with a couple of stipulations, and my notes, and a podium, I agreed to dive into the deep end. And here is my best effort. Days after that, I was still trying to figure out how to tell this story, and I decided, as I used to tell my kids when I was an English teacher, you need to start at the beginning. So I start telling the story of the fearless women who influenced me in my life. I acknowledge my mother, who instilled a sense of pride, of work ethic, and a sense of responsibility in me, who was never afraid to speak her mind and stand up for what was righteous. And I honor my great-grandmother, who was a pretty tough lady in her own right, who wanted so desperately to become a school teacher, but had to drop out of school when she was just a young teenage girl to marry a man she barely knew. She taught me to stand up straight, to believe in myself, and she taught me to never give up, even when life did not make it easy for you. I stand here proud of the educator I was able to become, knowing that she so very much wanted to become a teacher. This is a part of what influences me to be a leader, but the other part of what influences me is a bit more involved. Now, I would not do my fellow English teachers, I would do them a disservice if I didn't use a literary allusion to explain what I mean by this. I concede up front that I'm going to borrow heavily from stories from Tim O'Brien, because I was reading his collection of short stories at the time when I was preparing this speech. And his short story, The Things They Carried, really influenced and impacted the ethos of what I'm going to tell you today. So I begin here. A friend asked me once why I decided to get my doctorate. Why did I strive to succeed? I gave her a very benign answer at the time, the kind of answer that folks give when they want to not reveal too much of themselves. So I told her, well, a terminal degree is simply the final punctuation of anyone's academic pursuits. But she was having none of that. She wanted to dig deeper. So she shared with me that she had heard somewhere, listening to women of color being interviewed that had gone on to succeed, that women of color often share that they strive to succeed, to set an example for folks from their race and also from young folks that are in their lives. They feel compelled to succeed because they are providing that example. So I had to admit to her, yes, that is true. And I thought about my own baby boy in that moment and how I cried when I first held him in my arms, exhausted from hours and hours of laboring. And I made him a promise when I first laid eyes on him then and there. I told my boy that he would be proud of me, that I would always make him proud. I vowed that I would teach him that he could be anything he wanted to be, and I would light the path with my example. So at age 24, with a newborn strapped to my back, I took my first steps toward making good on that promise. I enrolled in a local community college, and I began my studies to become a school teacher. As he grew older, so did my efforts. He was there when I graduated Magna cum laude with a bachelor's degree of English, and he witnessed the completion of my master's program and my doctoral degree. He saw me become an English teacher, an instructional coach, a vice principal, and a principal. Every step of the way, he would tell me how proud he was of me. And I would tell him that if I could do it, if his mommy could do it, then he could do it. I would tell him that if mommy can do it, you can be so much more. I had this conversation with my friend just a year after my husband and I watched that same baby boy march off, like his brother, to serve in this country's armed forces. This was the winter of 2017. And on February 20th, 2017, sometime after 9 p.m., much later than anyone should be receiving company, I responded to a knock at the door. It was a knock at the door that every parent dreads who has a child who is serving and fears of getting. My baby boy was gone. And we had to bury my son, and I had teachers I still had to lead. And I was myself feeling like I was lost. So in the days that followed, I struggled. I remember the flood of support from my son's friends, from parents, from teachers, from my family, from my own friends, from colleagues. Their words blended together like a chorus of all of our collective grief at the loss of such a hopeful and beautiful young man. And I was overwhelmed by the outpouring. I immediately went back to work for lack of knowing what else to do, and the parents expressed their gratitude. But I struggled. I struggled to understand the purpose of what it is I was doing. What I had done all these years was to provide an example for someone who was gone, and I was questioning what it all had been for. Now, I don't recall every kind word that was offered to me during those dark times, but I do remember what most resonated with me and what brought me back to my senses. One of my PTO moms asked how I was doing one day as I was standing at the desk in the front office. Before I could even form an answer, she just held up her hand to stop me, and she said, "I know someday you'll figure out where to put this." And she placed a card in my hand, and she left. She knew that I would understand exactly what she meant, that most women innately know, that as women, we are much like those soldiers O'Brien wrote about in his book, those warriors that we send off to war. We go off to war every day, humping our rucksacks across the battlefields of life. And in those rucksacks, what do we carry? We carry our disappointment, we carry our trauma, we carry our grief, and we carry our pain. We carry not just our own, but we carry that of those we love as well. But we don't just carry those things. We also carry empathy and grace. We carry compassion and wisdom, and we carry an infinite capacity to love. We carry the hope for our children and for every child, whether they're of our own flesh or the flesh of someone else. We carry those things with a straight back, and we're sure-footed. That is what makes us brave. That is what makes us powerful. Women are fearless because of the things we carry, and that fuels my work every day. So when asked to explain why I feel women are fearless leaders, this is my response. I lead without fear because of, not in spite of, but because of the things I carry. Thank you.